Welcome to Dream Pushers. We connect you with Web3's vanguard, creators and entrepreneurs shaping the future. Hosted by Chris Jonu and presented by Draper University.
I want to quickly mention that none of this is investment advice or financial advice, trading advice, or any sort of advice. And we do not recommend any cryptocurrency or investing in any projects. We're just showcasing the stories of founders. Welcome back, Draper University Web3 podcast. This is Chris Jonu. And today we have a superstar founder. Doesn't get much bigger than Stani Kulechov from Aave. And I interviewed him about Aave, but I think what's equally as impressive, and I didn't quite know it at the time, this podcast dates quite a bit, to be fair, was about Lens Protocol. And since then, that's taken such a life of its own and become, I'd say, the leading social network in kind of Web3. I don't know anyone that's challenging that at the moment. And got all the features that you'd want to see there, and just a great way of connecting and building apps that have social features. So it was about Aave, but I'm glad we got to speak about Lens Protocol when they were just kicking this thing off. But he's the founder of Aave, decentralized crypto lending platform, and Lens Protocol, a sustainable decentralized social networking platform. And it's highlighting the importance and the potential of decentralized social media networks and owning the assets and content that we create, sometimes over many years, right? You think about all the family photos and stuff that you have on Facebook, right? And then to be able to somehow get banned and lose all your investment into these platforms, it's pretty crazy. So love what he's doing, real game changer in the space, and super excited to share the story of Aave and Lens Protocol with you guys. Enjoy. Welcome, Stani. How you doing, buddy?
Very good. Thanks for having me here, Chris.
I'm super interested to get into your story, your background, particularly your entrepreneurial journey, and then get into the story of Aave. And you've sprung this social media thing on me, so I'm excited about that as well. I want to talk about your new Lens Protocol. But before we do that, can you set the scene for the audience and perhaps give a little bit of your background and then the start of your entrepreneurial journey?
Yeah, I've been always a bit curious about technology in general. When I was very young, I think 9 years old, I used to play video games and online games with my brother. And one of the games that we played was Counter-Strike, and I used to build our own servers. So one of the servers we built actually into a vacuum cleaner, and that was one of my experiences where I started to get more excited about technology, and my brother started to learn more about Linux and operating system programming. And for me, it was more about the application level and more like a consumer-facing programming. That was a time when PHP was the lingua de franca pretty much everywhere. I started to build also applications with Ruby on Rails, and Twitter was very early. Then my later teen years and early 20s, I focused more into FinTech applications. So I was always a bit of a finance geek, and I just loved the idea of what kind of things you could do with finance, and I saw a lot of opportunities to innovate there. I think in FinTech, what was quite interesting is that you innovated on the front ends of the finance systems. So essentially, users started to move into internet banking and then into mobile banking, and that like experience layer was most of the innovation has been happening. And then I actually went, instead of going to studying computer science, I went to study law in Helsinki, Finland, where I originally came from and grew up. For me, the idea was that there's so much regulation in finance, so I wanted to understand more how the regulation affects and works. And end of my studies, I started to go back into applying tech into commercial agreements and essentially research AI and blockchain. I stumbled upon Ethereum, and the idea of smart contracts basically blew my mind off. Since then, I started to go morning for evening and trying to figure out what kind of things you can build in finance. And then that just created the foundations to build Aave.
And what do you think that early attraction was to the finance world? Was that mom and dad? And where do you think that came from?
Yeah, I think that when I grew up, I was always thinking about like markets and how exchanges work, like let's say currency exchanges, but also like thinking about like how goods and services are exchanged between parties. And I always believe that kind of like freedom and free market somehow creates an environment where competition solves a lot of the market issues and stabilizes the economy. For me, I also did a lot of sports when I grew up. So I went to sports high school. I used to play ice hockey, and competition was something very important to me in the sense that it makes us do things that motivates to build new things and take new challenges and push ourselves further. And I think that might be one of the reasons. But I always loved numbers one way or another. So I loved mathematics, and I'm not good at mathematics, but I loved it. So just the idea of basically being able to calculate things and make sense to you. And this is what was fascinating when I went to study law, is that you have a completely different perspective where in mathematics or computer science, it's relatively straightforward to compute things. But in law, there's all this kind of things related to interpretation. What does the letter of law mean? And it becomes more trickier. And that gave me a interesting perspective. And I noticed that in blockchain in Ethereum, when we started to build smart contracts, is that compared to what I was doing in FinTech, focusing on the kind of like experience layer in the smart contract world, you're focusing on the back end of the finance system and making that more efficient. I don't know like the exact reason, but since I got my first allowance from my parents, I loved finance since then.
And it almost sounds like you did the law bit almost just to help with the disruption, right? It sounds like you just research how it works and where you can find the areas that are ripe for disruption. Am I wrong? Or maybe looking back retrospectively, you figured it out, but maybe that's what you were doing?
Yeah, I think also I feel like I'm always been like a builder. So I wanted to always build something and see the outcome. I love also to help people. So maybe a combination of seeing an issue and creating a solution is something that draws me into it quite a lot. And I think that might be the case.
Okay. And then Ethereum, right? You said blew your mind. It's definitely a question I asked the guests, right? It's as important as that first entrepreneurial moment. And so can you talk about that? And then what did that just take you down a different rabbit hole? Tell me about when you first found out about Ethereum.
I think there was a excitement around the fact that previously before Ethereum, I understood blockchain as a way of changing the account numbers. For example, you can send funds from one account, let's say one address to another one, in case of, for example, Bitcoin. And the idea of having this virtual computer running on a blockchain and you're able to compute and create applications, that really sparked the attention that pretty much create any kind of application, doesn't need to be finance, but essentially that application will, one thing is that it will exist pretty much like forever as long as the network is upheld and there's incentives. But also you can create applications that are immutable in the sense that if you deploy something into the Ethereum blockchain, what happens is that, and you make it immutable, what happens is that you have permanent applications in the form that they're deployed. So that got me very excited about that. Now, obviously, later during my time, I got more excited about the DAOs, the fact that you can have a group of people coming together and voting on different kinds of proposals and governing an important piece of infrastructure, such as finance or social media or anything that is just so valuable to the society or humankind that you don't want it to be governed by a company in that way. So I think for me, the selling point was the technology for me.
So how does the idea for Aave emerge? Is that like you working on the front end stuff and realizing there's an opportunity in the back, or was it just clear that was like a problem that wasn't being tackled?
Yeah, I think like I always understood that there's like value like everywhere, and we usually see value through markets. So let's say that if there is a grocery store and there's grocery products, you have milk, you have cheese, they have value because they have a price, they have a demand, and the same way you have value, for example, for housing as well. But what I started to think about is that these cryptographic assets that are currencies or tokens, especially like governance tokens, they have their own ways for determining values. For example, let's say a governance token might be valuable because it gives access to control the treasury of a protocol, or how the protocol collects a treasury, or how the protocol will be developed in the future. Some other asset might have a value because it's backed by, let's say, US dollars that are sitting in a bank account by the issuer. So what I realized that actually what blockchain is very good at is representing value. And what Ethereum made it very obvious is that with this virtual machine, like a computer running in the blockchain, you can do programmable money as well. And when you think about programmability, it's pretty much finance being dealt with agreements. So you have legal agreements, and then you have balances changing depending on the legal agreements. And for me, the idea was that I've seen a lot of examples where in traditional finance, you can draw liquidity against your assets. For example, it might be your house, you can do a so-called equity release. So I was thinking that you could do the same thing in blockchain, but also because we use smart contracts, we can build something better. So what we did is that we built a protocol where you can deposit cryptographic assets and earn yield on them. And of course, we draw anytime you want, as there's liquidity. Then you can use them as collateral to borrow other assets. So just an example is that you can, let's say, put Ethereum as a collateral that you don't want to sell because you believe in that asset, or it can be in the future tokenized real estate. And then you can borrow, let's say, stable coins, convert them into dollars, and finance any goal. Typical finance goal might be, for example, paying for tuition, buying a car, or buying a house, or another investment opportunity. So basically what we did effectively is that we replicated what finance was and replicated in blockchain, but made it more efficient in that sense. And I think that's the kind of improvement and innovation we created.
Is this something you came up with? Did the DAO shape it? When did the DAO come into play?
So the DAO can play, I think, quite quickly after the launch. I would say like a year or so after the launch, basically when the DAO started to cover the actual protocol smart contracts. So in a year and a half, it's called progressive decentralization, where, especially during that time, where teams essentially created a project, built the product, and once the product is ready, slowly decentralized and gave the ownership to the community. So it's a kind of a time-consuming process, but the idea there is that you truly want to decentralize something that has product market fit, or I love to say protocol market fit.
Nice. And can you just tell me about the early days, maybe even in that first year when going around to pitch this concept, and what did that look like? And I'd love to hear some of the you're out of your mind stories and the first believers. I'd like to hear, it'd be cool to hear a bit of both.
Yeah, sure. Definitely it was very early because when we launched our first application, DeFi as a term wasn't even coined. So it was super early days. And there was just one decentralized finance protocol, or we called them back in those days dApps, decentralized applications. It was EtherDelta. So it was essentially a decentralized exchange. Then we created our first application that was called ETHLend, short for Ethereum lending. Then we started to see the ecosystem grow a bit more. Kyber, there was Banker, there was Uniswap. And essentially the way DeFi grew was through this ecosystem empowerment. So you can't do much with only one decentralized exchange if you don't have a decentralized infrastructure, meaning that you have all this other functionalities like lending, borrowing, stable coins. And we launched before there was any stable coin in the Ethereum network. So the main stable coin that was around was Tether, and it was on Omni chain. So pretty much on centralized exchanges. So it was very early in that stage. But the fact that grew DeFi was the composability. So let's say that a person could take a loan from our protocol, buy an asset in one decentralized exchange that is trading it at a discounted rate, and sell it in another decentralized exchange for a profit. That is where the kind of value came. So you first time have a financial infrastructure where all applications are talking to each other. And as a newcomer developer, you can build a new application above the top of this ecosystem and expand it further. Or you can even contribute directly to the Aave protocol, fork it, improve it, and redeploy. Like essentially the bar to enter to build finance became like non-existent. And that tried a lot of innovation.
And when did you know you were like onto something big, right? I'm looking at the site right now. There's almost 22 billion in liquidity locked. Like, when did you just know you're on something big?
I think the fact that there was other people around me also building interesting things, and also inside of the team believing on what I was doing, that was like a good support. Of course, dealing with technology that is pretty much like pushing the whole finance sector forward and changing the way we interact with finance today or perceive finance is hard to get into the mainstream because it's money. It's something very, I would say, a topic that you need to be careful how you approach. And I think for us, even till this date, there's still that mainstream penetration is something that has to happen, and it's not happened yet completely. We're getting closer and closer every year. And I think it's because the infrastructure itself has been built quite well. So we have decentralized finance. We have now a vibrant NFT creator ecosystem. Web3 social is getting traction now, and a lot of narrative is being built around that. But for us, in the early days, of course, there's less and less believers, but we knew that this is improvement to the current status quo. Like, this is better finance. It's more transparent finance. Every single transaction is auditable by anyone. Like, it just makes sense logically, emotionally, and in every way, like just believing that this is better. So we believed in it so hard that everyone else started to believe too. And that took the narrative forward.
Awesome. And then I'm just curious to hear your scaling the company, pioneering a new space, working with different chains, and also, I guess, like regulatory stuff that you got to deal with. How are you juggling all that?
Yeah, scaling is always, of course, difficult, but it's something that you need to do. I think I see scaling the same way as building. So normally you build products and then you work on network effects, and scaling is building an organization. So it's the same thing as you will be building a product, but you're focusing on actually just building the best organization you can have. And that's what scaling is. The reason it's hard because you have a lot of roles to fill, and you need to find the right people, and you need to make different teams and the whole organization work together to build those products and the vision that you have. So I think, like, when you take a builder perspective into when it comes to scaling and building a organization, that helps quite a lot, because you approach your organization in a way where that you are trying to make a very good, like, a product out of your organization. And that is very helpful, because end of the day, you are trying to create high quality products. And when you have good people, that's what helps you achieve those goals.
And so as you're saying that, I'm thinking culture, right? Has that been a big focus, or that's just a kind of a result of having good people?
Yeah, culture is very important. And I think part of the culture is also having this builder mindset where you have team aligned to actually building things and pushing innovation forward. So that's the thing you need to aim for. But also you need to remember that it's not only about building products, but also enjoying what you're doing. And part of that is basically celebrating those moments where you actually achieve a lot of things, or traction, or product launches, and also like spending the time with the team. So those things are very valuable when it comes to building culture. To pretty much get access to your assets and hold your assets, what Lens Protocol is solving is that you can create your on-chain profile. So a profile that exists on blockchain, and then you can have follower relationships on chain as well. So when you create a profile and you follow other profiles, what happens is that those relationships are tokenized as NFTs as well. So your follower, if you follow, let's say I'm the first follower of you, Chris, so I have the token ID 1, and you have your profile NFT as well. So with the profile NFT, you basically can control what you publish to your audience. essentially you can publish a picture of a cat, and then those follow NFTs. So let's say you have them 2000 for the sake of example, those follow NFTs will always reflect the latest content. So if I have your follow NFT and I'm looking at it on OpenSea or I'm looking at it in my wallet, I will see that picture of cat. But actually, the follow NFTs are dynamic. So when you update the follow NFT and post a picture of a dog, it updates also on OpenSea and all the other applications, pretty much making all those applications the front ends for the social graph. So I can see your latest contents wherever I hold that NFT. And the idea here is that normally when you think about social or like how the Web2 social media companies have been built, they usually lock you into the platform. So if you have 100,000 followers in Twitter, you can't port those followers elsewhere. So if Twitter, for example, suspends your account, what happens is that you can't go to another platform and broadcast there, essentially, especially if you believe that you shouldn't deserve that suspension. So one Lens protocol as a decentralized social graph is trying to do is basically ensuring that you own your profile and you own your relationship with your followers as the audience. So everyone, any developer, any part of the world can come and build a new social media application on top of the Lens protocol. And essentially it means that all these applications, they're growth hacking into the same social graph. So if everyone brings a new user, the whole network will benefit out of it, compared to something that we have in Web2 social, where Twitter focuses on building social graph within their platform, Facebook focuses on their platform, and so forth.
Yeah, that's crazy. And then specifically the NFTs you mentioned, and I've had these conversations with Async Art and a few others around do you have to put everything in the contract now? It was sort of locked up in that first contract. There wasn't room to edit it down the track, right? Whereas this is what you're saying. A fan buys an NFT or follows your profile, and then it continually can update, correct?
So basically, in your case, when you own your profile, you pretty much can do anything. So you can change your handle, you can update your profile picture even to reflect an NFT, and also it's basically an ownership of your profile and the graph for yourself. So think about it in a way where if any of those applications goes down, you still have your users and your followers and your profile. No one can come and take that away from you. And that's the kind of like a beauty of the social graph, decentralized social graph.
I understand. I was talking more specifically about the NFT you mentioned that could update itself.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, exactly. So in the follow NFT, how it works is that it's dynamic NFT. So whenever you call this post function, what happens is that it updates the latest content that you provide, meaning that the follow NFT essentially just reflects the latest content. It creates this kind of a permissionless, censorship-resistant distribution channel between you and your audience.
Incredible. Do you see that almost as like a subscription model, or that's just that original price gets done ongoing content forever? Yeah.
So that's the interesting part, because Lens is a protocol. It means it's very flexible. So you can create new follow modules, and everything is smart contract based. So you can create follow modules. You can create also the reference module and so-called collect module. Even those NFTs are dynamic. If you like, for example, going back to the example of the dog picture, what you can do is you can collect that NFT, meaning that you are minting a immutable version of that content. And you as a creator, you can actually set the fee that will cost to collect. So you can basically set it's going to be, let's say, 20 USD, or let's say 200 USD, or you can apply some custom logic, like you can auction, or you can give it for free collection, or only, let's say, 500 can be collected, or only followers between 1 to 100 collected, and everything is smart contract based. And also there is this a function called mirroring. So you can mirror and amplify the content to your own audience. So let's say your friend posts something very interesting and you have this amount of audience. you can call a mirror function. And if someone collects from your mirroring, your friend will basically share the collect fees with you. So essentially it's like monetizing the tweet button. And also the collect is as you will collect NFTs. So those are the built-in monetization tools within the Lens protocol. But because it's a protocol, anyone can actually come and build new ways to monetize as well, besides the two built-in ones.
And this sounds amazing. I'm just thinking, you must be so busy with Aave. How did this come about? Was it just your own frustration with, I know how important community is to projects, and I guess those communities sitting a lot of times on your Facebooks and whatever else, you mentioned Twitter. Was it a frustration from your experience, or was it something you knew the world needed to have?
I think definitely like it's also about like progression. So essentially what we saw is that like if you think about like Web3 landscape, so first finance is one of the kind of like obvious use cases, because Bitcoin is a kind of try to solve a financial issue, and decentralized finance solves a lot of different kinds of financial issues. And then when we go ease with the kind of like a digital art and so forth, solves a lot of challenges for creators, because they can actually monetize their art and sell directly to their peers, and also create a community around their work. And with the Web3 social and Lens protocol, what we realized that what is actually missing at the moment is a way to create a on-chain profile and have that audience without anyone else being able to take that away from you. So it was like a natural step on that. But also recently I created a tweet, since there is a discussion about in Twitter about Elon Musk buying Twitter. So essentially I commented in Twitter saying that I'm the new interim CEO of Twitter. And I also did another post where I mentioned that I laid down a new roadmap where for the 90 days where we're gonna release the edit button next week and so forth. And it got a lot of traction, but obviously as a joke. But what happened is Twitter algorithms, they basically suspended my account. So essentially, like I didn't have any access to my user base, like my audience. And on top of that, Twitter was my only public facing audience. So I couldn't go anywhere else to actually say that, hey, effectively say that I'm banned from the platform or suspended, and I'm trying to figure out what's going on and so forth. It made me realize like how important infrastructure we built.
Yeah, and hopefully that's why Elon's jumping in too, right? I was almost going to ask, has his team been in touch? Because it seems pretty well aligned.
His team, I think like they probably are very aware that like the Web3 space exists and there's things happening here. I'm not quite sure how much they can affect, because the way the Web2 businesses are built is they are deriving value for the company, and the companies as a platform, they are deriving value to the shareholders. So they're in a kind of a position where they need to continue building what they have been building, because otherwise they will have a completely different kind of feedback loop. You could make that change and leap into Web3 and decentralize the platforms, but you will need to change your organization and push also that kind of like a messaging and initiative through your whole organization. And that's the trickiest part, of course, in my opinion, plus getting support from the shareholders. So it's doable, but also there is also challenges related to it. But I believe that Web3, the future of social media is Web3.
Yeah, I was thinking, yeah, you're right. Like it's maybe a bit too far-fetched. I was thinking the first kind of port of call would be the identity bit, and then that's where the product fits in perfectly. And I think it's one of the things I did see about, he did want to make sure that everyone was human and had some sort of identity bit that was going to be added pretty quick, and I assumed it would be blockchain, and who knows, maybe it's Lens protocol before we know it.
Yeah, and I think it's like currently, even if you think about it, the verification in Twitter is done by Twitter. Something like that can be easily done by friends in the communities, and even like communities can verify not just like people, but they can verify also facts. as well, or proof of being somewhere. There's things like there's a lot of power in communities and actually letting the communities to manage and do a lot of kind of the foundational work as well, and setting the incentives to succeed in there. Aave protocol, the risk management, asset listing, everything's done by the community at the end of the day. And I just see that there's more people that have opinions on how to verify and how to create a better system when everyone comes together and thinks solutions.
I wish I could see your tweets, man. I'm sorry to hear that. Yeah. Stani, thank you very much for joining me. I know we're right on the minute and really loved every minute of the conversation. Really appreciate you taking the time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chris. This was amazing.
Love the chat. Thanks, buddy. Talk soon.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you for joining Dream Pushers. Inspired. Subscribe and share. With dedication, craft your legacy. Push boundaries.